Verse 152. Do not discriminate discrimination. There is no truth in discrimination. This world of delusion is discriminated as to that which is perceived and that which perceives. But in reality there is no such dualism in it. It is an error to recognize an external world. The conception of self-substance is due to imagination. So do not discriminate discrimination. Why are we not told to just not discriminate? We're being told not to discriminate discrimination. Well, this relates back to verse 125. We were told that discrimination is cut asunder by non-discriminating discrimination. The mind can get caught up in playing games. You might recognize that there's discrimination going on. In fact, it's essential to recognize that there's discrimination going on. But how do we do this? Do we do this in a way which fuels further discrimination? Do we say, oh, this is my discriminating mind at work? Well, that's no good, because you're still in the discriminating mind. The only way to practice non-discriminating discrimination, as opposed to discriminating discrimination, is to come back to awareness, to step outside the discriminating mind. Come back to your sense of being, what in the next verse is called mind, just the mind, with a capital M. So this discrimination takes the form of discriminating between somebody here and a world out there. And it's that world out there which this being here is apparently experiencing. This is the basic model which we relate to. We could arguably call it the scientific model, because it's the model which science reinforces. It's the way of thinking that science reinforces, and it's the model which modern religious people also follow. They do not quibble with science when it tells us that there's an external world out there which we're experiencing through our senses. So science and religion are in agreement on that. But we don't want anything to do with this dualism. It's an error to recognize an external world. And one of the reasons we do this is because we imagine that that external world is something which has got intrinsic substance. There are things out there. It's physical, it's material. We imagine it's got self-substance. But again, we're told that this is due to imagination. Verse 153 pursues this theme. Imagining by this imagination, self-substance is conceived to rise by the conditions of origination. And the word here is pratyayodbhava. An external world is recognized in distortion. There is in fact no such external world, but just the mind. So if we're looking at a mountain or talking about a mountain, we can talk about the vast geological forces which gave rise to it over long periods of time. But imagine we're having that conversation in a dream. If we're having a dream about a mountain and discussing the mountain, we can talk about the vast geological forces which gave rise to it over immense periods of time. And from the perspective of being awake, we can see what a lot of nonsense that is. The mountain came into existence instantaneously. And of course you might argue then, that's just a dream mountain. A real physical mountain is surely a product of immense geological forces and time. Well, no. Not according to the scientific understanding. If you subscribe to the belief that there's a world out there full of entities and objects, then you must ask yourself, how do we know this? That image of the mountain arises instantaneously in the senses of the individual. According to science, our minds are busy processing electrical signals. That mountain is nothing more than the result of electrical signals, which are apparently a result of our sensory processes. And our mind instantaneously creates the image of the mountain, as well as the whole physical universe. Seems a bit far-fetched, but that's the scientific story, that's the story we all subscribe to. So that mountain, as far as our understanding of it is concerned, as far as our most direct understanding of it is concerned, is nothing more than a construction composed instantaneously by brain processes. So that's it according to the scientific understanding. Everything else is just surmise, supposition, inference, deduction. We assume that there's something out there which is the source of these electrical signals which find their way into our brains. That's an assumption. It's quite a laboured one, actually. But we hang on to it. We hang on to this backstory. That's what we think of as real. As spiritual practitioners, as enlightenment practitioners, we drop the backstory. We stop investing in it. We stop investing in this basic dichotomy of a world out there and an individual here who is somehow, by some miraculous process which has never been properly explained, experiencing that world out there in here. It's quite absurd, but this is the story. So we're told there's just mind, just the mind, or just mind. And this means come back to our sense of being. Stop worrying, stop getting anxious about all this stuff that's supposed to be going on out there. As much as possible, as often as possible, come back here. Come back to the purity of your own awareness. Come back to pure being. Come back to mind. Verse 154 tells us that to those who see the world clearly and properly, the separation between that which perceives and that which is perceived ceases. There is no such external world as is discriminated by the ignorant. So this is a condition of the spiritual practitioner. But then again, we still get caught up in it when we're not practicing, or when practice isn't happening. Verse 155 tells us when the mind is agitated by habit energy or memory. I would describe this as mood. It's mood. there arises what appears to be an external world. Mood is what characterises a relationship between the individual here and the world out there. When the dualistic imagination ceases, there grows transcendental knowledge, the realm of suchness, the realm of the wise, which is free from appearances and beyond thought. So this dualistic imagination is about thinking in terms of an individual and an external world. The more we can undermine that backstory, the more our transcendental knowledge grows, become established in the realm of suchness, which is the realm of the wise. It's free from appearances, we're not getting caught up in it, and it's beyond thought, it's beyond discrimination. We're back to non-discriminating discrimination.